All right, thank you guys all for showing up. I'm really excited for this. This is one of my first times speaking. I've done a few at Root Access. Talk about more at the end here. Oh, no worry. All right, I've always been crazy, like, oh, it's 2:40 and start exactly on time. Hate going to things, it's like, started 2 minutes ago. Anyway, so let's get started. So it's all about bringing your designs to life. So the process from 3D modeling, 3D printing. I'm gonna try and get through this really quickly so you can ask lots of questions, because every time I do this, it's always like 30 minutes worth of questions, and it's fun for me to answer specifically what you want to know. First off, so who am I? So I was born in summer 1996, and I watched my dad play Super Mario 64 all the time. And that's important because now that led to what I do now. I always loved video games, and I wasn't super social as a child, so it was a lot of like RPG, fantasy games, Dragon Age, Mass Effect, Okami, that kind of stuff. So now that I am graduated with the BS in Mechanical Engineering, yay, hated school, but I got through it in 4 years. I actually don't use my degree tons for 3D printing, and instead I model tabletop figurines for D&D, which I had never played Dungeons & Dragons until like 2 months ago. Super fun, highly recommend. All right, oh yeah, and the guy in that picture is right there.
Hey.
That is Rick. We've been together for 5 years, and we run M3DM together. M3DM is the business, me is 3D models. Sorry your name isn't in there, but he's very important, and he's very part of it. Let's get to the point. So we're looking at a sphere. I know, wow, it's so impressive. So this program here is ZBrush. It's super expensive. It's like $1,000 bucks. And you're like, oh, I can't afford that. We'll get to that later about what you can do. But this is my workflow, what I do. So I have a sphere, and then I sculpt, and I end up with that eventually.
Wow.
Thank you. And then eventually you can see it. This is the mini, and then there's a print you can actually see. So it's super detailed and super freaking small. That's the whole process. You're all so impressed. Yay, good start. But that's the whole point of it. That's what I do. So everything in a nutshell in like 30 seconds. That's the whole point of this and what I'll be doing. So let's go to creating my first model, because that's going to be a lot more relatable for you guys who are interested in 3D modeling. If you could end up doing this right away, I'd be super impressed, and like, please tell me your secrets. All right, another sphere, but this is a different program. It's a little dark. That's how Sculptress, it's called Sculptress. And that's how Sculptress is on your laptop even, it's just dark. But it's a great program because it's free. It's made by the same company that does ZBrush, but again, the free version. There's only like 6 brushes, which is great. Those are in the top left, so there's 9. There's 9 boxes, only 6 of them are brushes. Not sure why they did that, but whatever. So this is where I first started out, because again, it was free and really accessible. So what you do is, I have a grab brush selected here, that's in the circle, and then if I click somewhere and drag up, it's going to pull the clay upwards, as if you're working by hand. And there's 2 lines there, because since I'm working digitally, I can work with symmetry, which I love that because it makes things way faster. So once I do it, it looks like that. So you kind of get an idea of how you can manipulate these meshes and how they work. Obviously, if you could only do a grab brush, it would take forever. There's a ton of different brushes. Draw brush, for example, is my really little scary face. I made that yesterday. It improved so much. Again, you can build up features. There's little like weird bulgy eyeballs, or you can carve out. That's the same brush. You can always kind of invert them. But that's kind of the concept here. So 8 hours later, I'm not exaggerating, that was my first model. And it's funny because the first model I showed you, this guy, probably only took me like 4 hours. This one took me twice as long, and I still love it. So this is one of the first 3D prints I ever did as well. I did that on an FDM printer, and I'll talk about that in a second. All right, 3D printing. So there's 2 things you gotta know. There's 2 different kinds of 3D printers. If you guys are familiar with 3D printing at all, you probably know FDM printing, which is fusion deposition modeling. And essentially what that means is you have a little metal nozzle and extrudes plastic, and it melts it together layer by layer by layer. Since it's plastic, it tends to not be as accurate. For small objects like these, you can do it. It's just really hard, and I was really bad at it. But it's great. You can come in if you want to. I appreciate being polite. I love the awkward, like, oh no. Anyway, so it's great for larger functional prints. You probably saw it was like a 3D printed car. Doesn't run well, but you can print really big stuff with FDM printers. And then the last thing is it's very, very cheap per part. You can get a spool of filament, and filament just this big plastic spool, essentially. You can get PLA, PETG. Essentially, they're just different composites of polymers. And it's 4 cents a miniature, roughly, for what I'm doing here. You're like, oh, that's super cheap. It is super cheap, but again, the quality isn't fantastic. And if you're like me, it's all about the details, and like, I don't know. It makes me very excited, which is funny because I play, again, Dungeons & Dragons. You see him on a tabletop. I sit this far away from them, but it still matters to me. You can see their eyelids. I don't know, it's just how I am. Now, SLA, so stereolithography. So it's funny because the file type that you use for FDM printers is .stl, which is stereolithography, but it's not actually stereolithography. That's for resin printers. So the way that works is I have this big box, okay? I have this vat of liquid resin. When you shine a UV light on it or put it in the sun, even that also has UV rays in it, it slowly cures. So instead of layering plastic, we're layering resin. And since it's resin, it's way more detailed. So kind of for context here, I know that you guys don't know millimeters. I'm used to it because in school, we didn't really use the units we use here. For context, 25 millimeters is roughly an inch. And these models right here are composed of 0.05 millimeter layers. So not 0.5 millimeter, 0.05 millimeter layers. That's why they're really detailed. You can do 0.05 with FDM as well, but it has problems. It likes to clog a lot. You usually do 0.1 with that. Anyway, SLA prints or resin prints is what you see here. They are more expensive per part. They're about 15 cents a miniature for these. Now, of course, somebody like, oh, it's still really cheap. Like, yeah, but again, it's like 5 times more expensive than FDM, and when you scale it up, it gets really expensive really fast. That's about 3D printing for right now. Here's a comparison. These are not my models. This is just a really convenient picture that I was too lazy to take. The one on the right is resin. The one on the left is FDM. Now, if you do have an FDM printer, I'm sure you're like, this is so unfair. You're making FDM look terrible. Kind of. This is what it realistically looks like, okay? Because you can make the FDM look just as good as the resin. It takes forever. And like, I swear, just anything that happens with FDM, like the temperature changes, the humidity changes, or your PLA dried out, it's not gonna work. But for the resin, you have way less moving parts. You only have that Z-axis moving up and down. That's it. With an FDM printer, you got your X, Y, and Z axis. Everything is moving. It's a huge mess. It's really awesome, don't get me wrong. If you're doing 3D printing, I still recommend either printer. It just depends what you're doing. If you're a dork like me and you want lots of D&D miniatures or small, cute things, go with resin. All right, so there's things you need to know when designing for 3D printing. So now we're going to connect my 3D modeling part of this back with 3D printing. So I'm going to go back to this really quick, and I'll mention how 3D printers work. So they're layer by layer, right? So think like an inkjet printer, going back and forth, left and right. Well, when I get here, there's nothing under it. So when the extruder is extruding plastic, that's how this works, there's nothing here. So it will just fall onto nothing. So when you design stuff, you also have to design support structures to put under your model. Otherwise, it will fail. It'll feel like spaghetti arms. Same thing with the resin one. You have to have support structures for them as well. They do look totally different, but that's a whole other talk. All right. So we know that there's overhangs that need support. You also have to make small elements bigger. So a lot of the minis I have weapons like swords, daggers, that kind of stuff. But the thing is with that, if you do like a true scale like sword, it's going to break when you 3D print it because it's so thin. So essentially the swords and the weapons that I do are super bulked up and they're super thick. Now when they're this small, it ends up looking fine. Also to exaggerate small details. So our eyelids, the amount that my eyelashes stick out, my eyelids, it's a really small crease, realistically. If you take me and scale me down that small, you're barely going to see it unless you have like a magnifying glass, right? So when I sculpt these, you look at them up close, they look kind of scary, kind of stylized, because they have these giant eyelids and giant eyeballs. That's how they actually show up when they're 3D printed. So more about support structures. So this is an angel that I did, just kind of cyberpunk. All of these lines right here are not part of the model, as you can probably tell, and they're support structures. So as I was mentioning earlier, when this is printing, if nothing is here, this will just fall to the bottom. And since this is a resin print, it doesn't do spaghetti nonsense like the FDM one does. It just sticks to the bottom of the resin vat. So I'll have like this perfect model, and then there'll be perfectly vertical lines with nothing printed. And then the bottom of my resin vat will be like a little disc. So it's a little better with resin when your prints fail. There's only a little disc at the bottom. When an FDM printer fails, it's like a spaghetti monster. There's just plastic everywhere, which I've done several times. But yeah, if you look at her armor and stuff, you'll notice that's really carved in as well. It's very intentional, so it actually shows up. Same with her hair, it's all pressed to her body, which looks a little unnatural. It looked okay, but if I didn't have it stuck to her body, I'd have to support every end of her hair, which I could have done, but again, it's really fragile. I want these things so I can just like pick them up and move them around, and they're not gonna break or if they're worried about being too fragile with them. Now, I'm sure you're like, I want to 3D print a 3D model. Lucky for you, There's a wonderful place called Root Access. You haven't heard of it before. They're the ones who are throwing this entire event pretty much. Andrew and Derek run it, and they are fantastic people. You can go there and you can learn to 3D print. They don't sit there and print things for you. They tell you how to do it. And 3D printers run around $300 to $500 as of right now. So if you don't want to jump in with that much money, this is a great place to just kind of try it out and get a feel for it. So the two 3D printers you see here, this one was like the devil. We got rid of that one because it just like started hissing. I'm not kidding, it just didn't work. This one's great. And we have a new super expensive one that was donated that I also love. These are all 3D prints that were done there. You probably noticed next to this rose, there's like a little LED. It's hard to tell, but it is a little heart. It's just because it's so far away from you guys, you can't tell that it's a heart. But yeah, Root Access also has like soldering, laser cutting, knitting, crocheting, making t-shirts, you name it. I don't work for them, but I love them. So definitely support Root Access. And I have a website. So the website is on these business cards right here. You guys pick them up at the end if you want to. Most of the tutorials are completely free. I think it's $3 a month to get access to my exclusive weekly tutorials that you vote on what you want to learn. But it's stuff like this. So this is how I made the armor for the dragon. That dragon's the same one that's right here. Just showing the process and what it means. A lot of this stuff has to be done in either ZBrush or Blender. Blender is also free, but I still recommend starting with Sculptress. You're like, what is Sculptress? It's the word sculpt, wrist. Just so you guys like really remember it. It's fantastic because again, you can just get started. If you have this really expensive program, it doesn't matter if you know how to use it. There's so many brushes in ZBrush, it's really overwhelming. I probably started it and quit it like 5 times because I'm like, this is too frustrating. But eventually you'll pick it up. So again, the summary, because I know I've talked about it a ton, I want to move into the question section of this. So you guys can just ask me questions as you want. So 3D modeling is a similar process to working with clay. You have different brushes, you can add up, you can take away material. That's just, think of it in that way, and it makes it a little easier, more natural to get into. And there's 2 types of 3D printing, FDM, and then resin. Resin is king, in my opinion, or SLA. And then 3D printing is not supposed to click and print. There's gonna be a lot of troubleshooting involved, and you're gonna need to be able to be a tinkerer of some sort. It's like, even though I'm not traditionally using my mechanical engineering degree, I definitely use a lot of troubleshooting how these things are working. And then yeah, there's special parameters considered when you're designing for 3D printing. Overhang, small elements, exaggerating details. They're all really important things you have to know. And as your first 3D model, you try to 3D print, it's probably gonna look terrible. It's okay. You just keep doing it. Like, oh, he has no eyes. Sculpt him a little deeper. Now he has eyes. It's just a process. So that's pretty much everything. I try to get through that as quick as possible. So it's quick. Cool. That was about 15 minutes. Awesome. So now we have as much time as you guys want pretty much to ask me questions about anything you want to. And it can be specific. Like I had someone ask me how I designed a 3D model on my front porch. It's not a super interesting question, but I could answer it. Yes?
Is there any like super accessible program to do this 3D modeling for just anybody to start with?
Sculptress. Yeah, for sure, because it's free. So you can just download it. It doesn't like if you import models, because you find like a Christmas tree online, like I want to put ornaments on it. It might make your Christmas tree look like a oatmeal. Like, I mean, it's going to look ridiculous, but you can sculpt from scratch and just get used to the process.
Okay.
Yeah, it's super fun. I really enjoy it.
So it kind of works like Maya, or is it just like...
Maya is awesome. Glad you mentioned that. But no, it kind of works like Maya pretty much. You have brushes, you have your little sphere, and you can slowly manipulate it. That's where I showed the cat example from.
Oh,
Yeah, no, you're, oh, right, human later. Yeah. I'll show you later. Yeah, no, it sounds good. Any other questions? Yes?
Do you ever re-apologize your models after you're finished sculpting?
Yes, I do. That's a very good question. So, you guys didn't know 3D models are composed of squares. So when I zoom in on any of these models that I had, like these ones for example, they're composed of lots of squares and triangles. They're super, super small. So I used to be called Dynamesh, meaning dynamic mesh. So it takes all those squares and stuff and only puts them where there is more detail. I mean, you could not retopologize it and keep everything super, super high detail, if that makes sense, but the file size will be like 2 gigabytes for like one model. And it's just annoying, because when you try and slice it, it takes forever. So I'll take them and I'll have the computer optimize it for me. I can do it manually, and I have done it manually. That's really only useful when you're trying to rig assets for video games. So the model you see here is probably about 500,000 polygons. So polygon just meaning a shape with 3 sides or more. Video game assets are about 30 to 40,000. That's it, versus 500,000. So I don't do video game models because they look terrible. The way that you make them look good is use textures. So in real life, that's what I like to say, when you touch something like, oh, it has texture to it, right? In a 3D modeling world, a texture is actually color. And then an alpha is texture. I know, I don't know why they named them this thing, it's whatever. So like in World of Warcraft, for example, all the models have a texture on them. That's what the details are painted on. So if I were to take that off, it looked like a really like low poly person. By low poly, it's like me, but you would see like really angular lines all the way around the face. Hope that answered your question. I went way farther. Anything else? It can be anything.
Local source for the SOA?
Yes. So local source as in being like where you can get one? Yes, so Root Access doesn't have an SLA printer as of right now, so I don't know of anywhere you can locally use one. But if you did want to try and print stuff out or have things prototype where you can contact me, because I have 5. I can't stop buying free printers. Any other questions? So I'll just be hanging out here. Or I can start showing you guys stuff too.
How long have you been doing this?
Oh yeah, so I started this as of last year in August. So I've been doing it for just about a year now. Yeah, I did it obsessively. So you do it for 8 hours every day, you'll get this good.
So what, you may have said this in one of the past things I went to, but what got you started in doing it? Because you said you only started playing D&D a couple months ago.
Yes. So I just grew up loving video games in general. I wanted to have like models of them and that kind of stuff. So I slowly started taking like that into my own hands essentially. I wanted to make my own characters. So not only making my own characters, my dad got me a 3D printer because he's a huge dork and he's like, here, you have an engineering degree, go use it. And I'm like, I'm not good with actual engineering. School engineering and actual engineering are just not the same thing. And I'm sure you mentioned you're studying it now. You'll learn that. What year are you?
Second, sophomore.
Oh yeah, so it hasn't gotten bad yet. You'll be fine. But no, that's the concept. So I got sick of 3D printing other people's stuff. Like, I want to 3D print my own stuff. And so I was like, gonna design it. And then again, video games, because yeah, one of my characters in real life. These are great questions though. I really enjoy this.
Did you start with ZBrush?
I did not.
Okay.
I started with Sculptress and then I got ZBrush Core. So their ZBrush was like $1,000, which is like a fortune. You have to pay for it once, so that's nice. Mine has like $1,500 a year. So go to ZBrush for sculpting. Anyway, ZBrush Core is ZBrush, but it has some features missing. It's only like $200 instead. It's perfect because there's less brushes, less functions, but it's still just as powerful. So I enjoyed using that because I didn't get lost in the menus. Because I'm not kidding, in ZBrush, like, you can do a lot. I'll just leave it at that.
Do you by chance have the software to like prepare a model for the printer loaded on your?
I sure do. Let's look at that. Come on, exit out of this.
Does it still pull in STL files?
Yes, that's kind of like the norm. I don't know why it's not connected anymore, but I'll figure it out. So essentially the way that a slicer works is it takes your model and divides it into pieces all the way up, as I would take like a knife and cut it. It's even called a slicer, just think of it that way. So for an SLA printer, for example, where the LCD screen lights up, all the pixels will light up all at once, layer by layer. Now for an FDM printer, it has to tell the nozzle where to go and actually tracks it the entire way. Just for a little context in case this doesn't want to display anything other than PowerPoint. Why do you even care? Why is it a difference? Display a signal.
Nope.
It only wants to display PowerPoint. I'm not going to mess with this. Yep, sorry, that was a crappy answer. Any other questions though?
It might be something with it's like treating that as a second screen.
Yeah, I think so. So I can try and like drag it onto it or something, but it's being stupid. And I'll just sit here and fuss with it instead of answering questions.
Have you ever used the sculpt mode in Blender?
I did once, and like when you open up Blender, your right click and your left click are swapped, and it just made me not anymore. They fixed it as of like a month ago. But last year it wasn't like that. And it made me so mad that the UI was so jank. I was just like, no, I'm not fighting it. So I spent $200 in ZBrush instead.
What's the biggest difference between a free program like Sculptress and a $1,000 version of ZBrush?
That's a really good question. So things like Sculptress are going to have, again, not nearly as many brushes, and they're also not going to allow you to do something called masking. So what is it even? Mine looks way different. Whatever, it's still working. All right, so I'll tell you guys what masking is really quick. There we go. All right, so as you can see here, this model has nothing on it, and then this one has like this black thing drawn on it. That's called a mask. If you use like Photoshop or something, you'll be familiar with that. It's just a select tool. So all it's doing is it's saying all the polygons under the black area I am selecting. So in ZBrush, I can say only let me sculpt on that part of it, which is really nice. So I can take that part and then I can extract it, which causes all of this to be extruded by 2 millimeters. You can specify how much you want to extrude. And then now I have a separate piece entirely, which is a lot nicer because it'll be a more natural line between the dragon itself and the armor. Otherwise, it'll be kind of like the armor is meshed to him, which would be cool if like a zombie dragon or something, but I want really clean, crisp lines here that the armor is sitting on top of him and not fused to his skin. In a program like Sculptress, you won't have features like masking and that kind of stuff. That's kind of just like a quick overview. And if any, since I'm answering questions and stuff, if some of you guys did want to come up and either grab business cards or if you wanted to grab models and look at them, feel free. If you drop them and break them, it's 13 cents. It's fine. Don't throw them on the ground on purpose, but whatever. Yeah?
I was just thinking a kind of continuation on Dale's question.
Mm-hmm.
What is the software that you were going to show us?
Yes, I was going to show Cura. So
Oh,
Cura,
okay.
you can come up. You guys are like so shy and polite. I love it.
I didn't know they had a slicer for the serial lithography
Yeah.
stuff there.
So a .stl stereolithography, is actually used for FDM printers as well. That's what I thought.
I know Kira.
Right? You can also use .obj, which literally means object, which I thought was kind of funny. Either one works. They process the mesh a little differently, but the 3D print will look the same. I'll just kind of hang out here though. If you guys have other places you want to be, feel free. But if not, I'm totally down to talk.